Why do we tend to imagine the worst case scenarios in our minds? Have you ever heard the saying, hope for the best but prepare for the worst? Or have you ever found yourself worrying about something that hasn't happened yet? If yes, let me tell you that you are not the only one. In today's video, we will dive into the reasons to why we all, adults and children, do this. So let's dive in. The first reason, it is because our survival mechanism. Our brains are wired to detect and respond to potential threats in our environments. This is an evolutionary survival mechanism that has helped us to survive as species. When we imagine the worst case scenarios, we are preparing ourselves for potential danger and taking steps to avoid it. As humans, we are wired to imagine the worst case scenarios, even in situations where the probability of happening it is very low. This type of thinking is called negative bias, and it is actually a survival mechanism that is hardwired into our brains. Again, when we imagine the worst case scenarios, we are preparing ourselves for potential threats and dangers, allowing us to react more quickly if they were to occur. This is why when we hear a noise in an empty house, we automatically assume that someone got into the house instead of the wind, for example. Negative bias is especially strong in people who had experienced trauma or anxiety, as they have learned to expect the worst in order to protect themselves from potential harm. For children, negative bias it is a way for them to protect themselves from uncertainties of the world. However, it is important to remember that imagining the worst case scenarios always is not always helpful and healthy. In fact, constantly dwelling on the negative thoughts can lead to anxiety and depression. Another reason is lack of control. Another reason we imagine the worst case scenario is that we feel like we have no control over a situation. When we feel helpless, our minds tend to focus on the negative outcomes because our mind's job is to keep us safe, to keep us alive. Now, our mind tending to focus only on the negative outcomes can lead to us to struggle with anxiety and stress. Now, it is normal for children to feel anxious sometimes. However, when that worry takes over and becomes persistent, it's time to take notice. One of the most common ways anxiety manifests in children is by imagining the worst case scenarios. And this can lead them to spiral into a place of fear and panic. And let me give you an example. Let's say a child parent is running late to pick up the child from the school. Now, the child, instead of rationalizing, thinking, logic, saying that, oh, maybe it is traffic, that's why my mother didn't came, the child might start to worry that something bad had happened to the parent. The child might start to imagine that a crash happened or other terrible thing happened. Now, this lack of control over a situation can quickly become very overwhelming, and this creates a chain reaction of negative thoughts. The child might become anxious and feel fear, and he might fear the worst in any situation he might encounter, or she. Now, this can have a huge impact, or negative impact, on the quality of the child lives and the ability to function normally. If you had noticed that your child is struggling with anxiety, it is important to provide the child with tools to manage his thoughts and feelings. So encourage your child to focus on the present moment and remind your child that he is safe. Have open and honest conversations about their worries and help them to come up with solutions to feel more in control. Above all, remember that anxiety, it is treatable and there is help. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you feel like your child needs support, if feel like your child needs extra support. If you want, we can work together to help your child feel more secure and more empowered. Another reason to why we tend to imagine the worst case scenarios, it is because of our past experiences. Our past experiences can influence our tendency to imagine the worst case scenarios. If we had negative experiences in the past, our minds may automatically jump to the worst case scenarios in a way to protect ourselves from potential harm. Past negative experiences can make a child think and imagine worst case scenarios too. Past negative experiences can affect a child thinking and imagination. As parents, it is important to understand how our children's negative past experiences can shape their imagination, their thoughts and behaviors. And let me give you an example. For example, if a child was bullied at school, the child might imagine the worst case scenarios when it comes to social situations. The child might think that everyone is out to get him or her, or that it will not be able to make friends in the future because of that situation. It is important to understand that the thoughts and fears the child has are not irrational if the child had been to a negative experience. These are the results of your child's past experiences. Remember this. And as parents, it is our job to help our children overcome those negative thoughts, overcome those fears. Another reason why we tend to imagine the worst case scenarios, it is because of media and the news. The media and the news can also contribute to our tendency to imagine the worst case scenarios. We are constantly bombarded with stories of tragedy, disasters, which can make us feel like the worst is always possible. Have you ever noticed that your child is always imagining the worst case scenarios? Maybe they are afraid of natural disasters or they are scared of strangers. These fears can be a result of what they see on the news or on the media, or what they hear from the people around them, including yourself. For example, if your child sees a lot of news about natural disaster, the child might start to imagine worst case scenarios when it comes to weather events. It is important to understand that the child's thoughts and fears are not irrational. They might be the result of what your child is seeing and hearing on the media. As parents, it is very important. As parents, it is our job to help our children understand that not everything what they see on the media, on the news, or on their games, it is real, it is true. And we can do this by talking to them about this. We can also help our children to stop imagining the worst case scenarios by limiting their exposure to news and media. While it is important for children to be informed about what is happening in the world, too much exposure can be overwhelming and can lead to anxiety and fear. Too much exposure to bad news, it can affect us adults. Imagine what can do to a child. These are some of the reasons to why we tend to imagine the worst case scenarios, both adults and children. While it is important to prepare for potential threats, it is also important to remember that most of the times things do not turn out as bad as we imagine. Probably you had experienced this in your life before. By focusing on the positive outcomes and taking steps to control what we can reduce our anxiety and stress level. I hope you had found this information helpful and informative. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below in the comments section. I would love to hear from you. If you had enjoyed this video, please give a thumbs up and consider to subscribe to follow me for more content like this. And if you know someone who could benefit from this information, please share this video with them. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in another video.